How's it going, everybody? So, to those of you who have been around my channel for a while and uh, know me, my name's Shane, and I really like dinosaurs. I have ever since I was a kid, and I consider myself to be pretty knowledgeable when it comes to knowledge of both animals or living animals as well as dinosaurs. Recently, I watched a video by Goji Center where they created a hybrid creature called the Indominus 2.0. And this is where shit's about to get interesting, because they've declared that they're having a hybrid war, and I've decided I want to throw my creature into the ring. So, what am I creating? I'm creating a creature specifically to take down the Indominus 2.0. I recently found out that this is a bracket. So my creature might not have as much of a chance as I thought, but if it does make it, I'm convinced it can take down the Indom 2.0. Whether it can take down everything prior to the Indom 2.0 is where shit gets a little shaky. But what is the creature I'm creating? I'm 1 minute in and haven't even gotten into that. So my creature is going to be known as Crocodylus Imperator, the Crocodile Emperor or Crocodilian Emperor. Whatever you want to call it, it is the king of crocodiles. I've created... So the base genome is Deinosuchus hacheri. Giant 50-foot crocodile. And apparently, according to some research, may have been the one and only thing that that could feasibly feed on Tyrannosaurus aside from other Tyrannosaurus. I'm banking on that. I'm banking on the size, strength, and very, very dominant unkillability of the crocodilian to do this. But the Deinosuchus is just the base animal. I've also done something that I don't think any other person in this competition has done. I've added animals that are related to the Deinosuchus to sort of coalesce the DNA into something more focused. So, the three species of crocodilian I've added in addition to Deinosuchus, first is the Cuban crocodile, Crocodylus rompifer. I've added them for their social behavior and their intelligence, as well as their legs and mobility, because fun fact, Cuban crocodiles can gallop. They're very fast. I add that sort of maneuverability to a Deinosuchus, and potentially I have a creature that can actually move if necessary. That's not the only leg reinforcement I've done. That's just where I'm starting. I've also Cuban crocodiles are very intelligent and very social. That's necessary because I may have to deal with the Indominus' offspring. Obviously, the actual tournament is one-on-one. So, unfortunately, Pack Hunter doesn't really do me much good, but it doesn't do the Indominus any good either, and that's what I'm banking on. Also, Cuban crocodiles are a bit more intelligent than other crocodilians, so I'm banking on that as well. Obviously, I'm not creating an animal that's smarter than the Indominus. That's damn near impossible to do. But I'm working on it. Next is the West African dwarf crocodile, or Osteolaemus tetrapsis, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm doing it for the armored belly. Dwarf crocodiles have this glorious belly armor that I think could be very useful, especially if my poor crocodile gets caught mid-death roll. You never want to get caught lacking. And lastly, alligator Mississippianus, or the American alligator. I'm adding it for lung capacity because alligators are very good at holding their breath, even by crocodilian standards. Jaw reinforcement, because I feel like the absolutely insane bite force of an alligator scaled up to the Deinosuchus would be very useful. And for vocalization volume. Alligators are loud as hell, and I'm banking on that. You'll see why later. Next, we get into the non-crocodilians. Varanus salvator is my next animal, aka the Asian water monitor. I'm adding it for the water monitor's eyesight, to add more intelligence to the creature, and for more leg reinforcement. And climbing ability. Not for the full-grown Deinosuchus. I feel like that's unreasonable, but for the offspring. Trust me, this isn't the first time you're going to see something that is specific to the adolescent version of this animal. But we'll get there. Next up, probably the most important animal to this entire operation, Ambiostoma mexicanum, aka the axolotl. I'm adding it for the amphibious A-wing. Axolotls lay their eggs underwater. And my thought process is, if I'm going to be dealing with a creature that absolutely is smart enough to spawn camp my hybrid, the best option would be for it to lay its eggs underwater. That way, the Indominus, who is smart enough to know, that way the Indominus wouldn't mess with them. I know what you're thinking. Why not? I think the Indominus is smart enough to know that it's not winning a battle in the water with a crocodile this size. That's where I'm banking on it. Also, I'm adding the axolotl's gills, specifically to the youngsters. Since we are going by Jurassic Park logic, these guys are genetically modified to lose their gills after around 3 months, which is very useful because a fully aquatic crocodile would be dope, but it also limits my abilities in a straight fight. So, obviously, they're modified to lose their gills after a few months, like a lot of other amphibians are. Not that this thing's an amphibian, but you know what I mean. I'm also adding it for the axolotl's camouflage, because I actually did not know this going in when I originally added it, but axolotls have the ability to actually, like, lower or raise the color saturation of their scales, of their skin. And I think the Crocodylus Imperator being able to do that could be useful. It's not as good as the Indominus's camouflage, but it's at least good enough that I feel like the Indominus might get caught lacking if it's not careful. And lastly, for the axolotl's partial regeneration and healing. Now, obviously, with this being predominantly a crocodile, it's not going to have as good of healing as a full-blooded axolotl, but it might at least be able to slow blood loss. And best case scenario, maybe my crocodile can grow a tail or a foot back. You know, it's not going to help it in an actual fight, but it will help it after the fight, and that's also important. Next, Electromorphus electricus, aka the electric eel. And I'm adding that for electric producing glands below the jaw. Because I realized something. A lot of people trying to take down the Indominus have resorted to poison. It's not going to work. This thing is basically poison immune thanks to a combination of its shrew DNA and crocodile DNA. You can't poison it. But you can tase the living hell out of it, and that's the plan. Now, obviously, there's a bit of a downside here. The crocodile would have to choose between going for the glands or going for its bite. Either way, it's got an option, and its head is lethal. It also kind of helps with the whole death roll vulnerability problem too, because you don't want to touch this thing's head. It's a good way to get murdered by electricity. Also, a 5-pound electric eel could put out 850 volts. So imagine that scaled up to the size of a Deinosuchus. Yeah, I'm kind of banking on this being it also helps a lot with the pack hunting behavior. But again, it's one-on-one, so I don't know how useful it'll actually be. But, you know, I'm creating a creature that can wipe out the Indominus as a species, or at the very least, mind screw it so hard that it have no choice but to submit. Oh yeah, I know it's a little weird to think, but I'm actually playing psychological warfare with a dinosaur. I thought hard about this. Next is the Triceratops Triceratops horridus. Now, this might seem interesting to add a Triceratops to it, but I thought hard about this. First thing, I want to make this clear. It does not have the Triceratops' horns. They're useless. Or at the very least, they're useless for this animal. Instead, I added it for the beak, further jaw reinforcement, and a partial frill on the back of the neck, which is used to defend its crocodilian weak point. Something a lot of people don't know. Unless you're from Florida, then you definitely know this. Alligators and other crocodilians have a weak point right in the back of their neck. Normally, they're pretty durable even to gunfire, but that little weak point in the back of their neck, you can blow through that with a .22 pretty easily. So a partial bone frill would be good for defending that neck point, and I'm banking on that as well. Also, I'm adding it for the Triceratops' omnivorous nature. Fun fact, crocodiles actually will eat fruit for a dietary supplement. Triceratops are herbivores who will eat meat as a dietary supplement. That's another thing about my hybrid. It is technically omnivorous, primarily carnivorous, but it's like a big bear, basically. Think of it like that. This thing will eat plants to supplement its diet if necessary, which I think could be useful. Crocodiles, because if my plan to screw with the Indominus mentally works a little too well, this thing might have a bit of a hard time getting a meal. So being able to eat plants is useful. I also added the Triceratops for one reason and one reason only. An instinctual dislike of Tyrannosaurid dinosaurs. The Crocodylus Imperatrix will see the Indominus Rex, and it will be on sight. I think my animal will at least be smart enough to, well, maybe not plan an attack, but at least it'll be smart enough to wait in the water. But it will still on sight any Tyrannosaurid that gets close. Unfortunately, this also means Rexy more than likely. But I'm trying to take that. But I'm trying to take down the Indom 2.0, so I need every advantage I can get. Onto the last couple of hybrids, and these are mostly for supplemental abilities. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the Latin name of this creature. No, you know what I am, for the sake of content, because I think you guys will go chuckle out of it. Manura Hollande, aka the Superb Lyrebird. I added this for two reasons. Well, three reasons, but two main reasons. First of all, intelligence. Lyrebirds are very smart animals. I feel like between the Cuban crocodile, the lyrebird, and the water monitor for intelligence, I have an animal that is at least as smart as a dog. It's not as smart as the Indominus, but it should be smart enough, and that's good, and that's important. Also, lyrebirds are omnivores as well, so that kind of further reinforces that. But most importantly, sound mimicry, and this is why the alligator's lung capacity and volume comes in handy. Because I've created a giant crocodile that can mimic sound. So anytime the Indominus hears herbivores near the water, it'll have to think, is it actually a herbivore near the water, or am I walking into a trap? Best case scenario, it'll act like a siren song, lure the Indominus in, and it'll get murdered. Worst case scenario, the Indominus will instinctively choose to stay away from water sources, and that means I still win, because it means that the Indominus will either die of dehydration. That's really unlikely, but I can hope, or it'll have to think, or I'll psychologically mess with this animal, and that's good enough for me. And finally, the thing that I feel like makes it into all of these hybrids, but it's a little too good, so I can't really say no. And that is Blarina breviconda, aka the northern short-tailed shrew. Iron-coated teeth, heightened metabolic rate due to adrenaline, and an additional toxin resistance. Now, crocodilians are very resistant to poison as is, but I feel like having the shrew's DNA would help. More importantly, the heightened metabolic rate means that my crocodile will not be as lazy as most other crocodilians. However, I am not going for the full adrenaline shock that most hybrids have, because that would be terrible on a crocodilian. Oh my god, can you imagine? But most importantly, it's for those iron-coated teeth, which will probably also coat the beak that the Triceratops DNA gives it as well. By the way, I didn't specify this earlier, but it does have the Triceratops' beak in the front of its nose. Basically, between that, the crocodile's bite force, and the short-tailed shrew DNA, I'm essentially making an iron-reinforced nutcracker. Now, I think it goes back and forth on whether the Indominus has iron deposits in its scales as well. But if it does, this should be strong enough to break it. If it doesn't, it's definitely strong enough to break it. Anyway, that is the hybrid I'm entering. Goju Center, I hope you guys appreciate this. Unfortunately, I don't have any art for this thing because A, I'm broke, and B, I have no artistic ability of my own. But if any of you would like to draw this thing, I would very much appreciate it, mostly just because I think it would be cool to see my creature in the flesh, as it were. Essentially, what it'll look like is a partially frilled Deinosuchus it has a slightly flatter nose due to the alligator DNA. But more importantly, it'll have that beak, and it'll have like a modified version of that beak in front for the purposes of penetrating hide. Anyway, that's the hybrid I've created, Crocodylus Imperator. To those of you out there who are interested, I hope I make it to the tournament. I hope I make it to the bracket, and I hope you guys like it. I was actually going to work on a second hybrid, but I found out that if you do that, Goju Center will throw both hybrids in the bin, so I'm not going to do that. I may only I may still make that hybrid, but I'm only going to enter in Crocodylus Imperator because I'm not trying to get disqualified. So, hybrid plan B, that's just kind of hybrid plan B. It's not going to be entered in the tournament, but it might be fun. It might be fun for a discussion point at some point. Hell, maybe I'll even make my own 2 hybrids fight each other. It might be kind of dope. All right. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and hopefully I'll see you in Goji Center's bracket. Peace.